Okay, so we are back with a different kind of power rankings, and that's right, I'm just jumping into it. If you don't know how this works, I apologize, but, watch one of my previous editions of this. I've explained them in all of them except for this one, where now I'm just saying let's just jump into it, because I want to get into it, because it's fascinating. So, first, the bottom four, we have the Texans, Jets, Giants, and Lions. Again, not too surprising. I think the Giants, though, dropping a bit is maybe a little surprising, but it also makes some sense, right? Quarterback play is now tier 4. I think, it had been tier 1 at one point in the season with Daniel Jones having a good couple of weeks. He then certainly fell off a bit, but has still played well this season, at least solid this season, if not fantastic. But obviously with him being down, that's, the rest is hurt. And also you look at the rest of the offense, not much help for whoever you have in there. No points for wide receivers, for running game, or for offensive line. So that's not great. A little bit on defense, but not a lot there either. So don't know why I'm starting off with the Giants. Usually I start from the bottom and work my way up. Let's do that now with number 32, the Texans. Where Texans, another team, hey, a little bit of value with wide receiver, a little bit of value with the running game and pass rush, run defense and pass rush, and then some value with kicking. Not a great team. This Texans team, not very good. But what's interesting is this is a team that, according to this, has overperformed pretty significantly. 1.3 wins is what they've earned. They've actually won 4 games. So that's at least somewhat promising. It's not like this is a team that's, I guess promising in terms of hey, at least David Coley's done a solid job of getting the most out of this talent. It's not a talented team. But again, it's a lot easier to get 4 wins with a team that deserves 1 win than it is to get, a Super Bowl win with a team that deserves 10 wins, something like that. But still, kind of interesting. Number 31, the Jets. Jets have not had a great season. Solid offensive line, got that going for you. You got the running game, some value there. That's cool. And then you have, not the worst kicker in the league. So there you go. Obviously, the hope is that Zach Wilson can continue to develop and become better. It would be a lot easier, though, if you had some talent in that receiving room. And then 29, the last one on this board, the Detroit Lions. Again, some value of quarterback play, some value of offensive line. This was a team that had never been in the 32 spot all year, even though they had at times been, looking like they were going to go 0-17 perhaps. But, they have enough talent to avoid that, at least. Not a ton of talent, though, still. 3.1 wins earned, only 2.5 total wins. All right, so next tier here. So first we have, going from bottom to top, going to do it right this time, the Carolina Panthers. Again, kind of a disappointing season for the Panthers. Kind of is putting it lightly. A very disappointing season for the Panthers, who had a lot of expectations going in. But since then, offense has just been abysmal. There's still some value defensively. Some injuries have resulted in it maybe not being as good as we thought it could be. But I still think that there's a core there. I like the defense for sure. But the offense ineptitude, it's an offensive-driven league in 2021, and their offense isn't very good. Maybe Christian McCaffrey there makes a big difference. I mean, he definitely does. But even with that, still not a great offense and kind of a disappointing season after that hot start. Number 27, you have the Balls. That's the Washington football team. Listen, they punched above their weight class pretty significantly. 3.9 wins earned, 6 total wins. They're a team that has a tier 1 offensive line. That helps. And they, again, they stopped the run well. Their pass rush had been better than it currently is. I think injuries probably play a factor in that. But still, it's hard to win football games when you don't have, much of a quarterback, or the receiving room has been disappointing. Coverage has been disappointing. It's hard to win football games with that. Going over to the two teams, 25 and 26, I need to mention that I made a mistake here. So there's actually a pretty significant mistake. I accidentally put Matt Ryan's 1.99 wins earned for the Falcons instead of where it is for the Jaguars. I don't have time to go back and fix all of the graphics for everything, which I would have to do, but bad typo there. So basically, Atlanta should actually be with about 6.5 wins, whereas the Jaguars should be at about 2.5 wins. So really, and that's total, not wins expected. So for the Jaguars, they would be right around where the Giants currently are. They'd be slightly ahead, so which would put them at the number 29 team, so they should be a little bit lower. And also for Atlanta, they should be at 22 instead of at 26. So a little bit of a jump there. But again, Nothing too crazy of a jump, but my bad on that one. Talking about the Falcons, though, there are things to like about them. They're obviously Cordell Patterson and Kyle Pitts have been promising. The offensive line's been inconsistent, but it's had its moments. And, of course, Matt Ryan. So, again, they're a team that they're in the playoff hunt. Are they a great playoff caliber team? Not really. Have they punched above their weight class a little bit? Yeah, but there's still stuff to like. Meanwhile, for the Jaguars, they're just not good. It's similar to the Zach Wilson stuff, right? Solid offensive line, but no receiving help is going to make a rookie quarterback look bad. Coverage has had its moments. I actually think it maybe should be a little higher than tier 4 from what we've seen. But then again, it's had some bad moments as well, so I get it. So that's where the Jacksonville Jaguars are. All right, next 4. So we're starting off with the Bears, who, again, they're a team that there's stuff to like about them. Tier 4 quarterback play. That's, the best out of these rookie quarterbacks you're going to see, although part of it is from, it hasn't just been Justin Fields there, but still, that's nice to see. The offensive line is, again, solid offensive line. Not the best, not the worst. Receiving core, at least you're getting some value, although it's still not great. Not a very good receiving core there as well. And then the defense hasn't been very good. So, again, there's several things to like about this Bears team, but they're a work in progress. No denying that. 23, the Steelers, the team that is still somehow in the playoff race. Don't understand this week after week. Hey, quarterback play up to tier 4. That's nice. Still not what you want, but it's at least something. Offensive line solid, and then the defense obviously has its good stuff. It's not fantastic, but that's the strength of this team. It's just not a very strong team. That's the reality of the situation. Number 22, the Seattle Seahawks, another team that, again, disappointing. We're gonna get a lot of disappointing teams this far down because that's how it works. Russell Wilson, tier 3, like that itself isn't good enough. You need Russell Wilson to be tier 1. Like that's what this team was built around, was a tier 1 quarterback. And the receiving core has been really disappointing as well. So kind of goes to show sometimes the receiving core, it matters more about depth than it does about having a star or two. So that's another interesting factor. Run defense is good, but as a whole, not a lot else good about this Seattle team. Number 21, the Saints. I keep saying it's just a shame that we didn't get to see the Saints really get to be the team that we wanted to see this season. They stop the run so well, they cover very well, all that stuff is good, and they're really well coached on defense. But they just had too many injuries, and their offense wasn't good enough to sustain those injuries already. So tier 4 quarterback play, but it's been tier 5 these past couple of weeks, and then not a great receiving room. And of course, Alvin Kamara been hurt. That doesn't help either. So Saints are a good team, but they sometimes this happens. It's football. Luck is a part of the sport. There's no denying that. Next 4 here. So we have a couple of playoff contenders, and I think some surprises that people will have here. So first, 20, the Miami Dolphins here, which there is this is going to be a little bit controversial. The Dolphins fans will not be happy. But again, as I always say on each of these, I just punch in the numbers. I look at the PFF grades and then put it into my algorithm that I invented. So if you dislike the algorithm, that's one thing. But all of the tiers and stuff, that's not what I do. That I have no hand in that. Tier 3 quarterback play for Tua. I think that checks out. That feels right to me. Tua's been a tier 3 quarterback. Not elite, not bad either. He's been kind of right in the middle, which also kind of explains why there's been so much controversy and discussion about Tua. Receiving core, I think, it started off slow. It's done a lot better as of late, especially Jalen Waddle. He means so much to that offense. He is kind of the reason why I say, a receiving core matters more than an offensive line. Dolphins' offensive line is horrible, though, and they're putting that to the test because it isn't very good. But good defense. We knew the Dolphins would be well defensively, and then the quarterback play being solid. They've exceeded my expectations, but can they meet the expectations others have had of them this season and make the postseason? Number 19, the Denver Broncos. Another team where it's okay, there's stuff to like here, but what is there to love here exactly? I think it's a great way to say Denver, because they have so much talent across the board. In terms of they're getting pretty much solid chunk wins in each category except for pass rush, which is 0, which you can live with that because really for pass rush, unless you have a top 5 pass rush, there's not a ton of value there. The difference between bottom 5 pass rush and this 11th best pass rush just isn't that significant in terms of how much it actually prevents points being scored. But of course, they kind of just need to get a big upgrade somewhere, and probably the easiest way to do that would be quarterback, right? Find a way to get a tier 1 quarterback, but again, if that's the easiest way to do it, if it was so easy, every team would have one. It's not so easy to do that. Number 18, this is the surprise, the Indianapolis Colts. And right off the bat, the biggest thing that jumps out at you is PFF having their running game being not tier 1, not being top 5. That's surprising and wrong, quite frankly. It should be tier 1. It should be number 1 overall. So I don't fully understand that, quite frankly. And this is actually why when I created the algorithm, I didn't use PFF grades for the running game, because I felt like, me arbitrarily deciding who the best running backs are would actually be a better way to do that than using the PFF grades. That's the one position, that and kicking. Kicking I used, just how many points you're actually adding, whereas for the running game, I use my own picks on that stuff. So that's why that one's kind of a little bit different. I don't know. There should be 2 wins added to the Colts is what I'm saying. 2 total wins, which would put them at, around like what? That would be 10.7-ish. That would bump them all the way up to number 12 overall, which feels a lot more accurate, right? They're not, maybe the best team in football, but they should be around there. But also worth mentioning that they played better as of late, and that's what this algorithm doesn't really take into account, which is fine. That's just, again, you have to understand these things with context to use them. Like the offensive line, well, when it's been healthy, it's been elite, but when it hasn't been healthy, it's struggled, and it's struggled to stay healthy. So, that's kind of why it's that tier 3 grade. I think you can go over to coverage. Coverage unit was horrible early on, but it's gotten a lot better. Run defense has been pretty good consistently throughout the year. So, there's stuff to like about the Colts. I think they're better than 18. The number 17, the Ravens here, good offensive line and even some solid receiving core. I mean, if you told me the Ravens would have a tier 3 receiving core, I'd say, oh my God, they might be a Super Bowl team. But, the injuries to Lamar have obviously derailed this team a little bit. And I've continuously complained about how the one thing that this algorithm doesn't really take into account too well is rushing quarterbacks. That's why, the Ravens tend to or maybe it's just PFF grades don't take into account rushing quarterbacks, one or the other. But, they should obviously, I think, Lamar's been better than tier 3, but then with the, injuries and other guys in there. But even Tyler Huntley, I feel like that combination should be better than tier 3. But that's where the Ravens are right here. All right, so next 4, and I think you could argue all 4 of these are surprises. I think that would be fair. I might even, I'm a little surprised by all 4 of these. So number 16, the Kansas City Chiefs, who, obviously, Mahomes is a tier 1 quarterback. Teams play him like a tier 1 quarterback. So even if he hasn't actually played as though he's getting a tier 1 quarterback, you're getting extra value from it just by the way teams play. Also, they're kind of a great example of, hey, a defense can be good if you can cover well. Their tier 1 coverage unit is a huge reason why this defense is working. The pass rush hasn't been spectacular. The run defense hasn't been spectacular, but they cover well. And so that's why their defense has done well. And I also think that maybe their receiving core is better than tier 3 on top of this. Offensive line's been very good. That checks out. I agree there. But yeah, that could explain kind of the difference between, why they've won 11 games, but only 8.2 wins earned. Another team that's currently overperformed in terms of, 8.7 wins earned, 10 total wins is the Arizona Cardinals. Now, Kyler's tier 1. That checks out. Kyler's awesome. Wide receiving core being tier 2, I also think that checks out. The issue is, what else do the Arizona Cardinals really have? And the coverage hasn't been good as of late. If anything, that's, probably lower than where it's at. So this is a team that's very much reliant on Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins, and DeAndre Hopkins isn't there right now. But if he's back for the playoffs, you can still win football games that way. That's not the worst thing in the world to be. Number 14, how about the Las Vegas Raiders here? Although, again, another asterisk because, Darren Waller, who's, been struggling to get on the field these past few weeks, and obviously Henry Ruggs isn't getting back on the field. So the tier 2 wide receiving room, it's actually maybe a little bit lower, in fact, a good amount lower because of that absence than what maybe you've graded as. Tier 2 quarterback play from Carr, I think, checks out. I would agree with that. And then you're getting some value with the defense. Tier 1 pass rush, that helps. Tier 3 coverage, that's feels right to me. So you're getting some value there. That's why this Raiders team, on paper is probably a playoff caliber team. But again, when you're this close, you could make it, you could miss it. It's very easy to see one way or the other. And number 13, the Minnesota Vikings. The one thing that I've kind of always questioned throughout this season is Kirk Cousins really a tier 1 quarterback? PFF grades love him. Again, what I think I know about PFF grades from a quarterback perspective is they really value a quarterback who can just run an offense, and that's what Cousins can do. He runs an offense to a really good ability. If he's not tier 1, he still probably is tier 2 in terms of what he's done this season. So Maybe it's a little lower. I don't know if it's that much lower. I would probably say that the reason why this team has underperformed the way they have is more on coaching than on, the Kirk Cousins getting a tier 1 quarterback grade, but that's just kind of my opinion on it. All right, next 4. So we have the Titans at 12. Again, worth noting, when Derrick Henry gets back, they will probably be, have a tier 1 running game. So you add the couple of wins there, which would put them, at about 12.5. That puts them at actually 4th overall. So if they get tier 1 running game, they become a much better team. They really do. Tannehill's been tier 2. Offensive line's been solid. Wide receiving core has been injured, but it's been good when it's there, and really good coverage units. So all that combined means that this Titans team is dangerous. Number 11, the Chargers. Again, another team that's very much Justin Herbert dependent. If Herbert doesn't have a great game, they probably don't win. But Herbert's had a lot of great games, so that's the flip side. And again, good receiving core and offensive line on top of that helps him, of course. But that's what they need. They need the passing game to work if they're going to win. There is some stuff on defense, but it's not as good as maybe you would hope. Number 10, the 49ers, who might miss the playoffs despite the fact that they're doing very well in the algorithm. Tier 1 offensive line, tier 1 receiving core, which again, it might be a little surprising, but if we talk about how depth matters in football, well, they have a lot of depth. They really do. The tier 3 quarterback play, and it might be worse now with the Garoppolo injury, so that's certainly a question mark and a bit of a concern for San Francisco. And the defense has been solid. So again, another one of those teams that, according to this algorithm, probably should make the playoffs, but you lose a couple games you shouldn't have, and now you're right in the spot where you could miss it. And finally, number 9, the Cleveland Browns are a team that's massively underperformed, and the algorithm loves the way the Browns are constructed. It does. I think that a team that can run the ball with great effectiveness, they can cover really well, and they actually stop the run pretty well as well. Their defense is not the issue at all. They were set up with a great wide receiving play on top of this, but it's kind of been mediocre this year. The Odell thing didn't work out. And then obviously just the biggest reason why they've underperformed is just Baker Mayfield. He's giving credit for a tier 4 quarterback play, and that might be generous. It really might. It probably should be tier 5, which definitely knocks them down a peg. And on top of this, they've lost some close games as well, including back-to-back games where they, could have really coin flip games and didn't go their way. If they win both of those games, they're, looking like they're in a great spot. So that comes into play. I do think that this is actually pretty fair. I think the Browns are a good team. They've just been underperforming. Next 4 would be the Dallas Cowboys at 8. And again, big chunk of this is, hey, you got that tier 1 receiving core and a tier 2 quarterback and a tier 1 offensive line. You're getting a lot of value there. And the coverage has been tier 2. So that works as well. Again, in these big spots where you can get a lot of wins, they're getting a lot of wins there. So that's what puts them at 10.4 wins earned and 11 actual wins. Number 7, we have the Philadelphia Eagles here, who are a team that, again, they're interesting. Why are they so high? They've always outperformed this algorithm. And for a while, I was saying, this algorithm must be wrong or at least there must be some weird flukiness with the Eagles. Why do they keep outperforming it? Well, it turns out that they actually have been pretty good, and they probably will make the playoffs. Again, how good are they? That remains to be seen. But again, good offensive line and really good running back room is going to get you a lot of wins there. And, solid quarterback play. I think tier 3 checks out for Hurts. I would agree with that. Solid wide receiving play. And then, again, solid coverage stuff. So they also rush the passer incredibly well. So they might not be, elite at too much other than running, but, hey, that's one thing you're elite at. You can get some wins that way. You can win a lot of football games that way, although they haven't, necessarily lived up to that so far with 10.5 wins earned, only 8 actual wins. The Rams have been basically right on the wins earned and actual wins this entire algorithm. It's kind of funny where, again, tier 2 quarterback play from Stafford, you could argue that's lower. He's coming off of a bad game, but still, he's had some good games as well. And there's a lot of really good with this Rams team. There might not be anything that's best in football, but again, tier 2 offensive line, you have tier 2 receiving play, and even without Robert Woods, it's still been good. And then, the defense, tier 1 running game, tier 3 coverage, and then tier 1 pass rush. So that's probably the best part about this team is their defense. Even if the numbers aren't as good as they are last year, the talent is still there. So they're still a very good team. And then number 5, the Bills are, again, the classic team that I keep having to say, don't know why they're tier 1 running game, don't know why they're tier 3 quarterback play. But again, it kind of evens out. So I kind of agree with this, even if it's a little different there. Receiving room's actually been a lot better as of late. It's getting a lot of credit, whereas in the past, it had been kind of an issue. So that's good to see if you're a Bills fan. And they're covering very well. Even without Tre'Davious White, they're covering very well. So they have 10.9 wins earned. They've only won 9 games, but I think that's fair. I think they have underperformed their talent level so far. And then top 4, how about the Cincinnati Bengals here at number 4? This is surprising a little bit, but again, tier 1 quarterback play and tier 1 wide receiver play. And that, I think that is fair. Like, I think that for this season, that checks out. So those two things, that's going to get you, that's 7.5 wins right there. It's exactly 7.5 wins. So just that alone. You then have some other stuff. Coverage has been good this season. And then you're just getting various win totals across the board. Nothing fantastic, but that 7.5 chunk on those two, most important position groups in football, the quarterback and the receiving room, that's going to get you a lot of wins. They've underperformed a little bit. I think that's fair. I think Zach Taylor has underperformed with this talent level, but the talent level is there. They're a really good team. Number 3, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here. So again, it does feel like the top 3 are the top 3, although Cincinnati has snuck in there in the algorithm. In my opinion, it's these 3. I mean, even the Patriots, you could argue, like, okay, do they earn all of that? But let's just stick with the Packers and the Buccaneers in the NFC. Those feel like the top 2 teams. Clearly, the Buccaneers, tier 1 quarterback play with Brady, that checks out. I know people like to bring up certain bad games, but he's also had some really good ones. And the receiving core has only been tier 3 this year, which I don't think is crazy. I think I would probably have it a little higher, but like, they've been really banged up this season. They haven't had their healthy receiving core for most of this season. Antonio Brown was out for a good chunk of it. Then Mike Evans has been out for a couple of weeks. Gronkowski was out earlier in the season, and now Godwin is out for the rest of the year. So, I don't think it's crazy. Offensive line's been very good. And then, the coverage unit, it's not just tier 1. PFF has it as the best in football, which seems insane given how many injuries they've had in the coverage unit. But you think about it, and it's not as crazy as maybe you would think. For one thing, they have really good safeties, so that factors in. The linebackers, specifically, Levante David can cover very well, although, Devin White, unfortunately, brings that down a little bit, I would assume. And then the corners have also played well. Like, Jamel Dean's graded very well for PFF. Carlton Davis, when he's played, has graded very well. And even these, backups have performed well. So I'm not sure if it's the best in football, but it is better than maybe people realize. So that's where Tampa Bay is. And then number 2, the Green Bay Packers. Again, they just have tier 2 quarterback play, which I know some people will go crazy over and say, how could you not say it's tier 1? I get their argument. I mean, I would have it tier 1 personally, but I do get the argument because it's kind of one of those things where with Rodgers he's had some bad games. He has. Same thing with him and Brady. They've kind of been very similar in that aspect, although I think, one of the luxuries of Rodgers is he had those bad games early on in the season, and sort of the past 11 games or so, he's clearly been the best quarterback in football, whereas, Brady's kind of had the bad games just sprinkled out throughout the season. But still, I mean, Rodgers is probably my pick for MVP, so I'd have him as tier 1. The wide receiving room has been very good, really underrated, I think. Everyone kind of acts like Rodgers is just making something happen out of nothing. Like, no, there's good receivers. Devontae Adams is incredible. And the role players, they're just role players, but they do their roles well in the receiving room. So really good stuff with Green Bay's receiving room. They have a tier 1 running game, and the coverage and pass rush has been fantastic, and they're getting guys back and healthy. So Packers good. Packers are incredible. They're probably the favorites to win the Super Bowl, but they are not number 1 in terms of this algorithm. The Patriots continue to be number 1 here with a tier 2 quarterback, tier 2 offensive line, tier 1 receiving core, and tier 1 running game, not to mention the tier 2 run defense and coverage. Pass rush is okay. Tier 1 kicker. I mean, they've fallen off of their projected total of 17 wins through a 17-game season, but they're still looking at 15. Like, they're saying they should have gone 15-2 this season, or they should be 13. They should have 13 wins as of right now, which would be 13-2. Instead, they only have 9. So what is this? Have they underperformed, or is this just kind of, the algorithms being dumb? I don't know. You could argue that, maybe with all the offensive talent, these things kind of add on top of each other and you don't actually get as much value as you get. That could be an issue with the algorithm, I could see. You could also argue that maybe their receiving core isn't tier 1. I think that probably is the real way I would say. I'd probably just say that's it. So maybe it's a little bit lower. But the Patriots are still really good. If they're not ahead of the Buccaneers and the Packers, you could still make an argument for them being 3. I think you could. Like, they're a very good team. I know they just lost to the Bills. The Bills are number 5 on this. Those two teams, to me, kind of feel like it's those two in Kansas City those are the ones I could see getting out of the AFC. But even like Cincinnati's been good. I don't know. Interesting season. But yeah, that's what I think about all of that. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.